welcome back to Best Books Ever. I'm Tyler, and today we are talking about Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson, chapters 1 through 12, also known as parts 1 and 2. This is exciting because, as of yet, we have covered series that I have already read, so we're, kind of revisiting them, uh, looking at them from a different angle, seeing things you didn't see before because you already know what happens. You sort of catch things that you weren't able to catch because you were caught up in what the author wanted you to have at the forefront of your mind. Um, but now we're going to be covering a series I've never read. Series is a loose word. It's a few books that are all standalones, but they are tied together as like these secret projects for the Cosmere with Brandon Sanderson. Um, Theoretically, you should not have to have read anything else in his Cosmere universe. These are all standalone books. I imagine it's the scenario where it's like anyone can enjoy these, but if you have read other books in his Cosmere world, then there's little nods here and there. There's one big one that's like big for Cosmere people, but I don't know that it actually has any real significance to the story. So like if you don't know about it, I don't think it really affects it, but we'll talk about that in a few moments. Yeah, so I know nothing about this book. All I know is that it is called Tress of the Emerald Sea. It's part of the Cosmere, and that's it. That being said, I don't think there's too much to go over today. And nothing too crazy happened. I think it is mostly just it's the beginning of a book, so it's mostly setting up characters, building the world out a little bit. I think next week, we will have a bunch to talk about with how they set up where she's at, with her being on the ship, and you know we know the big stuff of like her trying to go to the Sorceress, trying to save Charlie, but just like a lot of potential with her being on the ship and how they set up the different seas and even some of like the different characteristics of the different seas. So we'll see. We'll see about that. But still some exciting stuff in this part. So I'm just going to kind of go through it, I guess. What do we got? So we got setting up some rules. Salt and silver halt the killer. I did really like that because immediately after she was like, she had like some quip about slant rhymes, and I felt the same way when I read it. I was like, silver and killer don't really rhyme. Like they kind of do, but not really. So that was funny. But also, it is setting up rules too, right? Where it's like, okay, salt and silver. I mean, we've already seen them used in action, so it's not like some big reveal when one finally gets used. But I wonder if there will be some big moment where she's in trouble and she needs to get some salt and silver, or there's some like, I don't know, just like some big reveal or some crazy way that she's able to get some to save her life or Charlie's life or something like that. Doesn't have to be. I don't think this has to be some big foreshadowing of, oh no, at some point, because like I said, they've already used it. Like we were just on the ship and they were being attacked and there was some vine spore danger that she was able to get past. But yeah, so I just thought that was cool, kind of set it up of like, here are the rules of the world, here's one of the big like nature dangers, but then here's immediately how they're able to get past it, because even before that, before the spores were mentioned, there's a moment where her tea is described as salty. It's very strange because I'm like, do people I like tea. I've never considered salt and tea to be like a pair. you know. I mean, usually go the opposite way. You go like sweet, you put like milk in it or honey or something like salty tea. Like at that point, especially with it being like hot, it's like ugh, you know. Like I know people when they have like when you get like a cut in the inside of your mouth and bleeding or whatever, you kind of like one of the things I've seen and actually I've done it is like swishing around like salt water. You put some salt in water, you mix it, and you swish around in your mouth to like I don't know help. I honestly don't even know what it's for. I honestly have no idea. I imagine it's to maybe help clean it out, maybe, and maybe just to help it like stop bleeding to like coagulate and stuff. Don't know why people do it. I know that I've been told to do it when I got like a cut on the inside of my mouth. But anyway, like that sounds disgusting, salty tea. But now you understand that it's like okay, if you didn't have salt in it and any spores got in the tea, you would be drinking spores and you would die. So there's got to be some salt in it. Some more setup. 12 oceans. 12 different oceans. We've seen the Emerald Sea, that being the namesake of the book. We have the Midnight Sea, which is where the Sorceress is. The Crimson Sea, which she said that she has to cross to get there. I don't know if the Crimson Sea was the same one that had the rosite and the crystal stuff, which apparently is a whole nother thing where it's like, oh well, there. I mean, unless she was just like making a weird analogy, but she kind of mentioned like crystals growing instead of vines. And she was like, oh, I can't imagine if vines sound horrible. I couldn't imagine like crystals growing inside of you and killing you that way. But yeah, so 12 oceans, don't know that we'll see them all. I don't really think we have to necessarily, but that just kind of building out the world of like 12 oceans, 12 moons, 12 different spores. You assume maybe they'll have some fun with that. But yeah, I'm not really sure. Fun though to kind of theorize and what are the different seas like. What else do we have? Okay, yeah. So here's something. Here's the thing, right? I'm gonna talk about something, and in someone's eyes, I'm sure they might view this as a spoiler for like the Cosmere. To me, I don't really think it is because once, like, these books are very interesting. Okay, like the Cosmere in general. If you have no idea what the Cosmere is and you're just stumbling into this and you're like, oh, Tyler's starting a new book, I'm gonna watch and read it along with him. Let me give you a basic rundown. Take like 30 seconds, right? Brandon Sanderson, he writes books, right? Has standalone books, such as the one we're reading now. He has book series. We've already covered Mistborn. That was the first series we did. That is a series he read, or a series he wrote that we read that was part of the Cosmere. The Cosmere is the grander universe. Another analogy you may know, there's all the Marvel movies that come out, like the Avengers and Infinity War and all that stuff. That's sort of an analogy that I can go with, right? Is that you can watch the different Avengers movies, Iron Man, Thor, all that stuff, and you can enjoy them, but they are all part of the grander MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So you can watch the movies and have a good time, but if you watch all of them, they sort of have references to each other. Some things get set up in one movie that have a payoff in another movie. Don't have to watch them all. Most people don't. you know. So Cosmere is sort of like that, where it's like you could just read Mistborn, have a good time. You could just read Stormlight, which is another series he does, and have a good time. But if you read all of them in his Cosmere universe, then it all starts kind of stitching together. All the small things start to stitch together. Don't know where I was going with that. Oh yeah, so well, okay. Everyone just calm down. So, what I was going to mention is that there's this character, Hoyd, who is, he is existent, it seems, in every aspect of the Cosmere. It seems like in every series, in every standalone book, he is present. So he's somehow, even at this point, there's a lot of theories. I don't delve too far into I don't go too far down the rabbit hole of different theories and connections and stuff like some other people do. I just sort of read them, just sort of read the books and, come across stuff as I see it. So Hoyd is sort of present. So him, if you remember, again, it's a very small line, and again, it means almost nothing if you've never read it, or if you've never read, the other books. But she does mention that there was the first cup that she received from Charlie was delivered to her by Hoyd, I forget what they call him, like the errand boy or something. I don't remember, but it is Hoyd. And then there's in parentheses, it's like, yeah, that's me. Would gave you the first clue or something like that. I don't know. Which is very interesting because even if you don't know who Hoyd is, you're immediately like, oh, this story is told from Hoyd's perspective, who means nothing to you if you've never read the other Cosmere books, and you're just like, oh, interesting. So, because sort of how this book is written, it is written like someone's telling you a story. It's not written like a story that exists and you're reading it, as most books, as most fiction books are. This one is very much like, all right, everyone gather around the campfire. I'm going to tell you a story. Just like with how it's written and like how the dialogue and the inner thoughts are presented to you. So that was cool. Just like, if you know nothing about Hoyd, you now know that that's, I guess, the one who's telling the story, maybe from the future. He's telling it to people of like, here's a story that I knew of and witnessed somehow. But if you are privy to the rest of the Cosmere, you know that Hoyd seems to be everywhere. Hoyd also, a little bit of info about him, he does tell stories. That is the thing that he does in the majority of his appearances in the Cosmeres. He tells some people stories. He gives them sort of like cryptic advice on things because, again, he's present on all over the universe. So very powerful, very old it seems. So all that stuff. So again, I don't know. I don't really know if that's a spoiler. If you're like, oh, because again, I never read this book, so I don't know how important he is to the story, or if he literally is just acting as the narrator, which it seems like that's what it is. From these first two parts, which are admittedly the shorter two parts we're gonna cover, each week we're gonna cover more and more, just because the parts get bigger. And I wanted to keep it even, so two parts. I wasn't gonna break it up into pages. That'd be insane. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I don't know how important he is going to be to the rest of it. To me, it does just seem that he's the narrator. It doesn't seem like he's going to intervene at any point. Which again, spoilers or not spoilers, I don't know. He normally doesn't really intervene. He very much seems like just like a traveler of the universe sort of thing. So, yeah. So that was my very important, while simultaneously being not important, little bit of Hoyd there. Um, so yeah, I thought that was cool. What else do we have? Oh yeah, I already kind of mentioned this, but it seems like the Duke sent Charlie to the Sorceress in the Midnight Sea. Don't know too much about her. All we know is that she is very, very powerful. Very hard to defeat her. It seems like there's maybe a war that's brewing or has already started with the Sorceress. That's pretty much the extent of what we know about her. We know that the Duke. I mean, we don't know this, but we're like 99% sure, based on the different people, like the different servants and stuff that Tress was able to glean information from, is that Duke was getting very upset with Charlie. He very quickly saw what he was doing when he was trying to bore all the other princesses to death, it seems. So he sent him out under the guise of it's his duty. He's old enough to take on responsibilities like this, to try to go to the Sorceress and I assume get some sort of just like agreement. Um, didn't happen. Sorceress was like, I have your child. Here's the ransom. Duke was like, nah, you're a liar. And so now Charlie's presumed dead. And now, what was it, like Dirk or something? What was his name? Like Dirk or Kirk or something like that. Nephew, quote unquote. We don't really know if that's his nephew, but it probably is now the heir, and they got a princess and all that stuff. So, pretty sick, honestly. sick in a negative way to be like, you are being uh you are being what's the word, unreasonable. You're being unreasonable. I'm going to send you to your death. Like, what an insane thing to do, you know. um I don't know. I feel like there was a better way, but obviously the Duke didn't care because this is politics and these are relations, and we need certain things. We need certain connections and stuff. So, all that being said, Tress is gonna save Charlie, which I think is interesting. I don't know that they're intentionally doing the whole like, oh, the you thought Charlie would save Tress from something because they set up the whole like damsel in distress thing, but actually Tress is gonna save Charlie. Um, that's a fun idea. It does seem a little on the nose of like, oh, we're gonna do the opposite. You guys, you guys never considered that the woman would be the savior. It's like, okay, we get it. Women can be strong. You know, um, but it is nice nonetheless. We love a good female protagonist that is able to get it done, and just as well as any male protagonist can. Um, we had Vin from Mistborn. Not gonna say anything more than that, but Vin is the main character of Mistborn, and she was very much not weak. Um, so we'll have a good female protagonist. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'll wait till the end of the video to get more into like predictions or that episode, because I guess you could be listening to this audio only as a podcast, which I recommend doing if that's your thing, and not the video on YouTube. But yeah, I'll wait till the end to get to predictions there. But I think overall that is pretty cool for her to be the one, because again, the the other reason why I like that Hoyd, we're kind of bringing him back again. Not important for you to have read other stuff. It's just me sort of talking, I guess, and this has nothing to do with anything outside of this book. Any like events or any characters outside of this book. But if you know Hoyd, you know Hoyd's personality. He can be very sarcastic, very snarky. At the end of the day, he is helpful to the people he likes, and that is generally the good guys, even if he may try to be impartial. He does generally try to help out the good guys and the protagonists of the story. But again, he is very snarky. He is very like, ooh, very cryptic, and it seems like cryptic just because that amuses him, but also because he kind of wants you to get there instead of him just giving you the answers to everything. So I do like that this book is sort of written that way as well. Um, where was I going with that? Tress saving Charlie. There was a moment earlier in the book. Oh no, forget it. Here's what I was going to say. The way he's telling the story is very Hoyd. Again, like, his little editorializing, or like whenever there's stuff in like parentheses, it's always like a weird joke, or like, oh, you thought this, but you're wrong, Um, Again, kind of on the nose with him being like, oh, there's these stories of women in towers that sort of just like call out for people, and so them kind of flipping that is nice. And even the beginning, like him describing Tress as someone who is very normal. She's not bad. She's not like, the way they set her up. They didn't set her up like an underdog, like other stories, right? Again, if we go back to Mistborn, which again, these aren't spoilers, this is literally the opening of the characterization of the main character of the book in Mistborn. You immediately learn this in the first few pages. Well, not the first few pages. If there's a prologue to the story that's but anyway, as soon as you meet Vin's character, you learn that she's very much an underdog character, right? She's like she like lives in an orphan. It's not even an orphanage. It's like a crime ring that like uses children to commit crimes. Like on the streets. Like her parents are dead, I believe. Her brother is dead or something. I don't remember. I also don't want to give spoilers, but you learn this very early on that like she has one of the toughest lives in the book, right? And so she's immediately an underdog. Like, oh, this the main character though. Like we know something's gonna happen with her. Like she's gonna become great in one way or another because that's what main characters do. That's not how Brandon Sanderson, the author, and Hoyd, the narrator of the book, set up Tress. It wasn't that she's an underdog. She's just a person. She has nothing remarkable about her in a good way or in a bad way. It's just she's just a person who lives her life. You know, she likes cups. She washes houses for money, and I mean, I guess she's poor, but it doesn't seem like anyone there really has a lot of money except for the nobility. Um, it's a very undesirable place to live, so there's not a whole lot of luxury that kind of goes around. But it doesn't seem like her and her family are struggling. It doesn't seem like they're on the brink of starvation. It just seems like they live a very, I don't know, like not in poverty, but definitely not comfortable. It's just they just sort of live their life, and it is what it is. So him describing her that way, and even kind of on the nose of like she's not a hero. It's like, okay, we get it. She's gonna be a hero, but again, not in an underdog way, just in a way of like that's just what I gotta do, I guess. I have nothing for me here, so when it turns out that I feel something that could be interpreted as love, I guess I have to chase it. So I like that. That's nice. Sorry about that. Um, Another really nice world building thing. I think I've talked about this before with other series, but um, I like when there are answers to questions that you may not have even had, and they're just like cool things in the world that in hindsight you're like, oh well, yeah, of course this exists, or of course this is. I think more specifically, I I would usually think about it when it comes to like weapons or powers. It's like, okay, this weapon or power exists. What is the answer to this? Why? Where's the catch? So like, um, I don't want to spoil stuff for other, but it's very tough for me because I'm like, is this a spoiler? It's not really a spoiler. It's not really indicative of. So we're just gonna go back to Mistborn because obviously the Cosmere's on my mind and stuff, and this isn't a spoiler. This is the magic system in Mistborn, which you immediately see before you even see Vin in the story. You see the magic system taking place. Um, and this also doesn't ruin the story if you know it. Like it's literally set up. It is not the story; it is the setup. In Mistborn, people have powers where they can eat metal. Different types of metal do different things. You can eat metal, and your body like burns it, sort of. And as your body burns the metal slowly, that then gives you the powers of the indicated metal. So eat the metal, your body quote unquote burns it, and that gives you fuel basically for that particular power based on what metal you are burning. So you look at that and you're like, oh, that's cool, because if someone just had the powers of that, it'd be kind of overpowered. It would be super OP, and you'd be like, why don't these people just rule the world? You know what I mean? But there's immediately an answer for that. And it's that, well, metals can burn relatively quickly, and they're also not super easy to get. So once it's burnt, like it's gone. You don't have to ingest more. And like I said, some of the metals, especially some of the stronger ones, burn very, very quickly. So it's not just an all the time thing. It's not like you're a superhero and it's like, well, I just have super strength. You know what I mean? Like that is, sort of the answer to it. There are other answers as well, but then that actually gets into spoilers. So just the natural uh, answer is that, well, you have to burn it, and it's a, so like very quick answers like that to something that otherwise would be overpowered and would break the story. So with this, less so an answer to something, but in the same vein of like some really cool things and some really cool like answers to how do we use these crazy natural aspects to this world, is that people have cannonballs that instead of it just being a cannonball, it's more of like a hollow cannonball filled with water. So it cracks on impact, it spreads water everywhere, which hits about 1.5 million spores, and those immediately start growing in branches like electricity, which I really like him using that analogy of, or that uh, simile, I don't know, of electricity, because like you can immediately imagine it like cracking out and being all like wild and random of like the vines or the branches or whatever. So like that right there is like, well, instead of shooting a cannonball, which would hurt and it would hurt your ship and it could kill people if it hits, why don't I just activate all the natural weapons that are in the air and on the surfaces and everything? Um, so yeah, I just thought that was really cool. Of like, oh yeah, of course people use the spores as weapons. Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't someone have figured out, well, if we shoot a cannonball full of water and it hits on impact on their ship, that's going to cause a crazy amount of chaos. Even if it doesn't kill anyone, it is going to have everyone immediately, like everyone's attention will immediately be on that. Like if you shoot a cannonball through the ship, that hurts and people would want to patch it up. But you'd have like one or two guys that would go and patch, like everyone else would be able to be like, okay, that's being taken care of. But because the the spores and then the vines or the branches or whatever, because they're so random and they're so quick and unpredictable, everyone immediately has to be on their toes when that's the attack. So I thought that was really cool. And I guess to connect it to my whole uh, point of like an answer to something, they immediately give an answer way earlier that I already mentioned, which is salt or silver. So again, it being, because again, if there wasn't an answer, it'd be like, well, we all die. you know, like how are we not gonna, how do we drink water when there's spores in the air? There have to be some sort of filtration system. There would have to be an answer. I mean, unless we had humans, or maybe they're not humans, whatever they're called, don't need water. What else do we have? Oh, another thing, which I sort of already was just talking about with them patching up a hole, but also some other really cool things in the world, is a sprouter, which I already forget what they do. It doesn't matter. Use rosite to repair the ship. Now that was fun because it seemed like, again, it had some sort of properties of the spores, which grow like the tendrils, but this was more of like a crystal that grew. So he used that crystal, grew it to patch the hole in the ship. So I thought that was cool because, like I said, it does just sort of introduce another thing into the world that, again, we may never actually see it be used in a super impactful way. Like there's a moment where they got the rosite and they need to, we may never actually see it, but it just existing is like, oh, that's cool. I wonder if there's anything else. I wonder if there's spores or anything spore like or crystal or whatever. There's like, there's 12 oceans, or there are 12 different types of spores or whatever. Does each one have its own characteristics? So yeah, I just like more so the implication of rosite, of what that could mean. Let's see. Tress took Huck and walked across the sea. That was something I think maybe we were all sort of waiting for when they introduced how the sea works. Like I remember in the very, very beginning, they were like, Hoyd, the narrator, was like, "Oh yeah, and the sea isn't wet." I'm like I remember putting down my book, or my Kindle and was like, "What do you mean the sea isn't wet? what are you what are you even talking about right now?" But now we understand. It's like it's more like dust. It's more like sand than actual water. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I feel like right when that happened, it's like, so can you walk on it? Because you also introduced the fact of like how it moves, and there's also points in which it sort of just stops, like the air ventilation underneath sort of pauses for a few moments. Sometimes it can be crazy, it can last hours or days, but usually it's only like a few minutes at a time. So immediately you're like, well, can you walk on it? Or, is it like quicksand where you'll fall? Like what exactly happens when it stops? Like, is it hard as a rock? So we did get an answer to that pretty early in the story, and she did walk across it. Also, along with that, we have Huck, who's a talking rat apparently. So now that opens up so many more questions of like, can other animals talk? Is it just rats? Was this a human that got turned into a rat? If so, are there other types of magic? Or other just magic? I mean, we haven't seen any magic. I mean, the closest thing we've seen to magic in this story is just the like natural reaction to the spores and stuff. So, is there magic in the story? Um, is it literally just a rat that learned to talk? Are we looking at like a Master Splinter situation? Um, yeah, that has like, if you didn't in that scene where he showed himself, I I also love that scene because you feel the same way Tress does, where they talk, you reveal he's a rat, and as you're reading this, I assume you did the same thing I did, where you're like, he's a rat? wait, wait, he's a talking rat, but they don't talk about it. They just blow by it for like a whole page or two, and then Tress out of nowhere is like, hold on, hold on, hold on. I think we need to backtrack. You're a rat? And then he gets real smarmy. He's like, well, that was self-evident. And then she's like, and you can talk. And he's like, also self-evident. And then Tress is like, ooh boy, I want to kill him. I'm gonna end him if he doesn't answer. He knows what I'm asking, and he's taking the questions literally. So yeah, I feel like if you weren't like me and you didn't immediately have like 17 different questions as to what Huck could like imply for the rest of the story and the rest of the world. Oh man. And then the last note I have, Tress is aboard the Crow Song. I believe that's what it's called. Like I said, this is sort of moving into predictions now. The rest of the this episode here. Really cool. Really interesting that they didn't throw her overboard immediately. Oh, if she hangs out for 15 minutes, let's put her on this. She's gonna throw overboard until realize that she can clean, I guess. So the captain's like, okay, I guess whatever. We'll have her clean, I suppose. Also, still assuming that she's an inspector, which she isn't, and she has actually seen some manual labor here and there. Yeah, so this again, moving into predictions. Like I said at the top, I think this has a lot of potential for some very exciting things to happen, right? Like we're going across different seas, so maybe we'll see, some fun stuff there with if there are different characteristics for you know, all the different of the 12. Um, Also, her just being with a bunch of other characters, didn't really get a chance to mingle or, sort of just have a group of characters in a story that we enjoy when she was on the last ship. So maybe this one will be the one. They are pirates, they're different than smugglers, so I don't know. She was even like, I don't know if that's better or worse, but a lot of potential there, I think. Are they even going in the direction that she needs to go? Because the smuggler one was, right? Does this change her plans drastically? I hope not. But maybe I hope it does in like a fun way, in like a fun story way. Because right now we know that she's trying to well, overall she's trying to save Charlie. Her initial plan, which she thought was easier than going across the Midnight Sea, going to the Sorceress and trying to save Charlie, was going to the king, trying to get the ransom and trying to pay the ransom, which you imagine is way too high. So as a reader, you're like, that's also insane. Where are you going to get that money? How long would it, we don't know how much it is, but it's like, it's got to be a lot, you imagine. Or it's really low. And it is glaringly obvious how much the king and the duke do not care about Charlie. Um, but yeah, anything else for next week? I don't really know. I mean, like I said, I would like there to be some sort of camaraderie. I do like that the crew was like hesitant to like throw overboard. They weren't immediately like, all right, well the captain said, so let's toss her over. So that right there kind of shows me like, oh, maybe there's going to be some characters that do care for each other, and they're not just coworkers, like, and they're also not just like cold-hearted pirates. They're not like that stereotype. They are like, hey, well, wait, hold on, why are we throwing over? Also, why are we messing with her like that? Like, if we were gonna do that anyway, why didn't we just like poke her with some sticks until she fell off the side? Like, I don't understand. Um, Also, upon learning more about them, I'd also like to learn more about the captain as well, because she seemed kind of cold-hearted, but maybe that's just the position she's in, right? Like, she's looking out for the best of the crew. It honestly, on paper, it makes complete sense to be like, we're not taking another mouth to feed. If she has no usefulness to us, it makes no sense to have her. Um, I'd like to hear more about Huck. I need to know more about him and see what is his deal. He said he'd rather not tell the story, but I feel like that usually when a character in a story says that, it's just foreshadowing for at some point he's gonna tell the story. Um, and then yeah, I guess just like, how does this affect her plan? Are they going in the right direction? Maybe she's lucky slash unlucky, and they are heading towards the Midnight Sea. Maybe they have like some sort of connection to the sorceress. Um, yeah, I don't know. We will see. I guess that is it. That was part 1 and part 2, chapters 1 through 12 of Tress. Let me know what you thought of that part. Or I guess those 2 parts, those 12 chapters. Any predictions you have? Like I said, each week it'll get bigger, because these two parts are only like 80 pages. I think next time it's gonna be a total of 160 pages, I think. Wow, so literally double. That's crazy. And then the final part is gonna be 230. Yeah, I think it's bigger, but that just means more story and more fun stuff for us to talk about. So that is it. Yeah, check out other episodes. Like I said, I've a lot of time, I don't know, mentioned the Mistborn stuff. So if you want to check out other books I did, I think a playlist pops up if you're on the video version. If not, just if you're listening on like a Spotify or something, you just scroll up, listen to other episodes. Yeah, because that's it. So until next time. Oh, I didn't even say what we're doing next time. So next time we're going to do parts 3 and 4, so another 2 parts. Those are chapters 13 through 34. Yeah, so that's that. I almost stopped before. That would have been unfortunate. So now we're good. Now, until next time, read those chapters, and we'll see what happens next, for with the pirate life for Tress.